by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Grit. I am Jason Harwood. With me is Jacob Litton. Before we get started, Jacob, I want to give a shout out to Ray Wittenberg. He's always commenting on our stuff on Twitter. Hopefully he shows up tonight. He was really interested in the extension talk that we're going to talk about today. So I want to give him a shout out. And then also Jason Lomersey gave us a comment on Spotify a couple weeks ago. I forgot to shout him out last week. First of all, Jason's an awesome name. We were old college roommates, and it's nice to hear from people I know. It's nice to hear from people I don't know. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to comment. Jacob, how are you been, man?
I'm good. Real quick to go back on that. So your college roommate's name was also Jason?
Yeah.
Just Jason and Jason?
Just Jason. Nice. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
No, I'm good though. Obviously, full swing in sports. World Baseball Classic. United States did not quite get it done. We fell short to Venezuela. Did you watch any of the World Baseball Classic?
I did watch. I was keeping track of it, but it was just something I meant to watch Sunday's game, but I just didn't get into it. What do you think about Skubal just like not just leaving and going back to the Tigers? What do you think about that? That's the storyline that I think is most interesting in this area.
I know, but it's weird because I didn't think much of it. I was like, yeah, I guess that checks. Whatever, he's going to give him a start and then go back. The uproar that he got for that, I was not expecting that at all. Obviously, as a Tigers fan, I can understand, like, yeah, I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want to ruin the season or anything like that. I guess people are thinking that he's more worried about his payday coming or things like that. But I did not think much of it. But I guess, people, that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, it did. I think it's been clear. The writing's been on the wall for Skubal that it's all about this contract coming up. Everything that he's done. There's stuff that's rubbed me the wrong way as a Tiger fan, but I've just, in my mind, this is it. This is the last year we have Skubal. That's truly what I believe. I don't think he's coming back. So let's make the most of it. I don't care. Just make the most of it this year. And that's all I guess I got to say about that. We got lots to talk about today, Jacob. We are gonna, we've had another week of free agency, some interesting developments, especially in the last day or so, right? So got plenty to talk about there. Talk a tiny bit about the roster, like where we think additions are going to come before the draft and maybe even, during the draft, just briefly talking. And the last part of our conversation, the second half of the show, is going to be extension talk. Before we get into heavy draft talk the next couple weeks, there could be extensions before the draft. We might get it, we might not get it. But I just think it'd be right now, it's interesting to talk about after we see how much they're spending in free agent, what their strategy has been about getting younger, not spending, top dollar. I think it's leading to these extensions. And so I want to know what Jacob's thought is, like who we're going to, who and when, and what may be the best strategy. And I put a lot of research into my end of it. I'm sure that Jacob did too, because just talking leading before we started the show, it just sounds like that's where he's really interested in talking about it. So I think that second half is going to be very interesting. Hopefully the listeners out there could chat in. I see Dan Pasca's on there right now. He says evening.
All right,
cheers
Dan.
for the show. Thanks for joining us, Dan. Always welcome to chat and ask your questions, and we'll try to fit it in as we go. All right, Jacob. We've had quite a bit of signings. I know it seems like a slow free agency period, but since we talked last week, there's been some, there's been quite a few additions or re-signs for this team. Quickly you want to run down, and then we could break down the bigger of those groups, especially the edge that we got. So why don't you go through that?
All right, real quick, you let me know if I'm missing anybody, but so we officially re-signed Tom Kennedy, Trevor Nowaski. We signed defensive back Christian Izien, tight end Tyler Conklin, defensive back Roger McCreary, linebacker Damone Clark. News dropping just today, wide receiver Greg Dortch. And the big one that I'm sure everyone was looking at as far as position goes, the edge DJ Wanham. So those are the guys that we've added, recently. Do you notice a common theme amongst these guys at all?
They're young. They're young.
Right.
They are not. They were. I would say Greg Dortch was on. I mean, I know I mentioned him plenty on this podcast, but I wasn't the only one. It was the connection with Petzing was just obvious, and then when Khalif left, it was like, okay, when is this going to happen? And it finally happened today. So that was exciting. So that
I almost
outside,
texted you
yeah,
because you were pretty high on that being a possibility. Then when Khalif was gone, you were almost willing to bet on it.
yeah,
But then it happened
I
tonight, and I knew you were busy with your son's band concert. I was like, I don't
yeah,
want to text him during it. I'll let it go.
yeah. I don't know if that happened before the concert or I think it might have been
I got the
after.
alert at like 5:35, and you said you were
Okay,
busy at
so
like 5:30.
yep. So it was during the I couldn't remember when obviously I wasn't looking at my phone during the concert. But that was just, I'm happy it happened, for the fact that I think he's perfect for what the Lions needed at this time. And especially with us, leaving, Cleve leaving inside the division. But the rest of us, I think if you're looking at the names that you're talking about, none of us were like, I hope they sign this guy. Um, I am interested. Like Conklin, I think is an interesting sign. I do like that, especially with the Michigan connection. Izian, when I talked to Tampa Tones, because he's come from Buccaneers, you know, excited about what he might bring to the table. Um, McCreary, you put a nice video on McCreary on there, so I don't know. Is there a name on there that you're excited about, or are you just kind of, this is just what we're doing this year? Signing second tier
So
guys, and we're not
that
going
was the
crazy.
other common theme that I think amongst them is that none of them they were not in bidding wars. I don't think to get the services of these
No.
guys. Most of them were special teamers or primarily on special teams last year. Izian started 10 games in 2024 at safety for the Buccaneers. But last year, I don't know if he started any games, but I mean, they kind of had him at outside linebacker, slot corner, free safety, like a hybrid kind of thing. But he was mostly special teams. Tyler Conklin last year played for the Chargers. He had 7 catches in 13 games.
Hmm.
So, not somebody, that they were necessarily high on. Damone Clark, also the linebacker. I mean, he played in 8 games with the Cowboys. He's cut, signed by the Texans. He's also primarily special teams. I don't know if you knew this, but Damone Clark actually, his Pro Football Focus grade was 31.9. If he had played enough snaps to qualify for like the player ratings, he would have been like second to last amongst all linebackers.
Hmm.
So, not exactly somebody that you're super stoked about. But he's not coming here to fight for a starting spot.
No.
He went to LSU. He was there in 2020 when Kelvin Shepard was an assistant. So there's probably some familiarity there. Special teams, somebody bringing on, like I said, just not anybody that you're super excited about. The only name that I have circled on this list is Roger McCreary. And that's the
Hmm.
one, I made that post. He got that sack against us in the blowout game against the Titans.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you want to call it a highlight, but so McCreary is 26 years old and he is almost exclusively a slot cornerback. You compare his numbers to Meek numbers last year, and I mean, really, according to Pro Football Focus with their grades and everything like that, he outperformed Meek pretty much everywhere. The difference with that is that McCreary is 5'11, Amik is 5'8, and Amik was out of position for how long last year? I mean, I
Yep.
know we said Amik can play outside if we need him to play outside. Ideally, you're not going to put Amik outside as much as we had to do. That,
Hmm.
just didn't work out. So I don't think that was all necessarily Amik Robertson's fault. But excited to have Roger here. I kind of, this feels like when Carlton Davis leaves last year, we get DJ Reed pretty quick. And it's like, okay, we filled that hole pretty quickly. We know what that is. I think that that's what the Roger McCreary signing is, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I think Izian is closer to like the Brian Branch role, where he could play some safety, play a little bit all over the field. You can ask him to cover. He could do the nickel. I think Roger McCurry is exactly what you said. He's going to be, the nickel guy. Both those guys will get in after the run game. They will play downhill. I do like that. Even if you look at Damone Clark, I know his numbers weren't that good, but if anything, he's a good run defender. Like he will play the run pretty well. Um, I don't think that's going to be his role here. But if they ask him to put him in on there, that's where he's primarily going to be at is, on run stopping downs. Let's talk about DJ Wanham because that's like what everybody's excited about, right? Because we finally got an edge player. What's your opinion of him, of what you've learned so far? I don't know how much time you've had to research him, Jacob. I didn't know, or if you knew about him before. Um, what's your thoughts so far?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you the same question. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. So, I
Mhm.
mean, we lose Al-Quadin Muhammad to Tampa Bay, and
Yeah.
he signs for 1 year up to $6 million.
Mm-hmm.
We end up signing later another edge defender, DJ Wanham, for I believe it was 1 year, right? 1 year
Yeah.
up to 6. I mean,
Yes.
we don't have the exact numbers, but
Yeah.
on the surface, it looks nearly identical. You know, I had not even really heard of Wanham that much before I had to research into this. But in all fairness, I also, when Al-Quadin got here, had not
Mhm.
heard too much about him, even though he had played for the Bears. DJ played the last 2 seasons with Carolina. He played in 16 games last year, 3 sacks, 42 tackles. His pass rush grade was 113th out of 115 edge defenders.
Mm-hmm.
That's not ideal for what you want to see. But at the same time, he didn't have Aiden Hutchinson in Carolina pushing people his way or
Mhm.
taking up, I know they got the defensive tackle Derek Brown, but the defensive line as a whole was not really as good as it is here in Detroit. So I think that if you're DJ Wanham, you think that this is your chance for a payday. Like, this is your chance to really show what you have. You take I know there was a quote that he said last season was kind of just a learning experience for him, a year of growth. It's like a slingshot, right? You take that year back, you pull back a little bit, and now you're ready to go. That's what everybody here is hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't think it's off the table that we sign another edge or that we draft one, right? But on the surface, I'm okay with it. I just feel like, Al-Quadin was right there. Why is he not still here? Why did he not play more when he was here? You already know. I thought the ship had already sailed. I didn't think there was any chance he was coming back based on his quotes. And then he kind of had some more quotes afterward too about, excited
Mhm.
to play us, and he didn't understand either why he wasn't being used. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on this?
I don't think DJ Wanham is your Al-Quadin Muhammad replacement. I think we're going to say that because they're going to be compared because of similar contracts, and one's leaving and one's getting here. If I'm gonna, so Justin Rogers did a tape review. So like a lot of my opinions, obviously everyone that listens to the show know that I really respect Justin. So he, his assessment, a dynamite run defender, can hold the edge really well. Um, he lacks pass rush. That's not surprising. It's exactly what you said. The grades kind of play that out. I will say that I'm excited that he's going to. We need someone to hold the edge. We had trouble on that outside edge holding the running game, along with backside help too. A lot of backside runs on there, but we just need to be able to hold that edge a little bit better. DJ Wanham's going to be able to do that. He's not. He's going to primarily be on first and second downs, and this is what the Lions like. Regardless of what you think, what I think, what everybody else wants out there, we want another, speed rusher on the other end. The Lions don't want that. They want a guy that holds that edge. And I mean, I see problems with that, but that's just why Al-Quadim's not here and why DJ Wanham is going to be going to be on the outside there. Um, I'm okay with the signing. I'm okay with the money. He's young. Like you said, he didn't have an Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. There may be more opportunities here than what he's had in the past. I also, when you look at, I think you made a point, and I just want to emphasize it. No one wanted Al-Quadin Muhammad last year. Uh, it wasn't like, yes, we got our edge. We're so happy. But somehow he gets all these sacks, and then we got to have this guy back. He's in his 30s. He's again playing opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Like all those things like go into the equation. Do we want to pay this guy for something that he's never done in his career before? Do we think he can repeat it? I don't know. We'll see next year what he has. You got something to say?
Well, yeah, just because Al-Quadin, when he re-signed last year, was 29 years old, and DJ's
Yeah.
28. So they're
Yeah.
not, I know you
Yes.
said DJ's young, but I mean, it's not like their age is that far off either.
No.
That's
No.
also where the similarities come in. But, I know you already mentioned the run defense. Al-Quadin only played like 80. He had like 80 snaps last year where they were running plays. They
Right.
just did not use him.
Yeah. And
And
they
maybe that
didn't.
was a
And that,
liability and they protected him from getting exposed. We don't know.
yeah. And that's, I mean, I'm gonna guess that's where it was at. I mean, if he could guard the run, you'd want to have him out there. I will say that also Al Qadim's a lot of his production came in a few games. I mean, he had multiple sack games in there. And so like, he'd go weeks without a time. Now, some of that might be usage based on how the Lions used him, but there's stuff to say that it wasn't like he was every game, creating all this pressure. So we'll see. The Lions value run defense more than anything else. And it shows with their scheme, it shows with the players they signed, and that's why they got DJ Wanham. I don't think they're done at the edge. And also, I think Wanham is more like a Josh Pascal replacement, a Davenport replacement than he was Al Quidi Muhammad. I think, we're going to have to see, they're going to do some pass rush, whether that comes in free agency or the draft. Or we got a guy in the roster, Hassanin, right? Like,
Right.
that's what
He's
I
a
think.
late round pick with an injury that we don't know. But I mean,
Right.
so if you say DJ's not Al Quadin replacement, which is like situational, like, your second or third edge rusher, if you think he's a Davenport replacement, that was our starter.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean,
Yeah.
do you think you're bringing him in here with a shot like, hey, there's a chance for you to start here?
I think he's gonna. I think depending on the draft's a wild card. Cam Jordan could be in there. Like if we get Cam Jordan, I think that. But I think as of right now, obviously he's the starter because we only have 3 edges on this
As
team
of right now,
Now
by
I will
default,
tell.
but yes.
Yeah, I will tell you that Levi Ontarike is the wild card as far as that edge position. He played out there too when he. Obviously, we got the injury history, so take all this with a grain of salt. But 2 years ago, when he was healthy the whole year, he played that edge position a lot, and he has a quick get off. So like he has some pass rush, and with Tyleek in there, I think they're gonna if Enrique is healthy, he's gonna be on the outside too. So he's gonna be in that edge discussion. I mean, I certainly want him out there as opposed to Aleem. I want Aleem in the middle. I don't want him
Yes.
on the edge like he was last year. So I think
Absolutely.
Enrique's in this conversation that he's gonna be listed as a defensive line, but they will put him on that edge. So quickly, Epinesa signed today. So I know that was
Where'd
I
he
don't know
go?
if you saw he went to the Browns. He just signed with the Browns like not too long ago. So he's off the board. I know that was a player that a lot of people thought that he might be a fit because he'd be a cheaper option, could play up to maybe get some playing time. So he's off the board. I just mentioned Cam Jordan. You got Jadeveon Clowney, Joey Bosa's on this list, Dante Fowler, Von Miller, Preston Smith, and a guy we're familiar with, Kyle Van Noy, all can play edge. Is there any guy on there? Do you think we sign any of those guys, or do you think it's draft time or someone that's not on this list?
I just don't see, with it being as far into it as it already is, we're clearly not going to throw a bag at any of them. I want Cam Jordan. That was the one that we talked about before. Like, I think that would be great. Veteran, somebody that can still has a little bit of gas left in the tank. That's not going to cost you a bunch of money, unless Cam Jordan is Cam might be looking for another payday, but also like a Super Bowl contender. I don't really want Bosa. I see Bosa's name floating around there a lot. Clowney played decently well last year, but that's somebody else that's probably looking for a decent contract. I just looked at Epinesa just to see. It says that he signed for 1 year, $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we could have got him at a discount over Wanham,
right?
But anyway, I just don't.
Wanham's your run defender. I'm telling you right now, like he's gonna defend that edge. So I get he's the solid wall, but Justin also said that if that tackle gets his hands on him, then he's done. He's stonewalled. He doesn't have a counter move or anything like that. But if he holds that edge, that's exactly what they want.
Yeah, I don't see us signing any of them.
Yeah,
I would like to get somebody on this list, but I just don't see it happening.
I think Cam Jordan's still a possibility just because of the Saints connection. He's not out there, and it might be even after the draft. Like Cam Jordan knows he's going to sign somewhere. He's probably looking around that. I think he's going to look at 8 million or more. So it kind of just depends on how free agency goes. But I think that's your probably the guy that you're going to ride. He's healthy. He doesn't miss games. Um, it's a 1 year stopgap. All those guys that I listed though are older guys. Like you're talking 30 years older. We have not signed a free agent as far as other than Teddy Bridgewater, we have not signed anyone older than 30. They've definitely
Right.
gone younger. Um, before we move on to roster stuff, let's talk a little bit about the Greg Dortch stuff. So his stats last year, when I looked at his punt return average. His average last year, he returned just 16 punts, but his average was 11.56. Khalif's was only 7.53. So he actually returned more. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, right? Like, are they kicking higher to Khalif because they know Khalif's dangerous? Or they kicking more to Dortch? Obviously, the Lions games were probably closer than the Cardinals game, so game situation all goes into this. So, but what will say is that Dortch also returns kicks, which I think is I mean, he's not like a dynamite returner, but I'm excited that he is an option in that return game.
Yeah, that's where the biggest difference is. Like Khalif's numbers were better in the punt return game,
Hmm.
but Khalif returned, from what I have, he returned 6 kickoffs last year, and Dortch returned 31.
Yep. Yes.
That could also be, kicking around or doing this or that, but I mean, that's a considerably higher number.
Yes. He just has experience, and what we need is people with experience back there. I mean, I know Tom Kennedy's there, but I just don't think Tom Kennedy's going to obviously show up for a game or two this year. That's what just Tom Kennedy does. But I think it's going to be, as of right now, I bet you it's Dortch and Sailors back there. Those are the two guys that I think are going to be back there.
And you
We'll
would be
see.
okay with that.
As of right now, yeah, I want to see Dortch. I want to see him training camp. I want to see what he's got. But yeah, I'm okay with he has experience. I trust him back there to make the good decision. Now he's not an absolute burner where he's a game changer back there. We could still draft someone to grow into that role. But as far as someone that I could trust back there to make good sound decisions, I'm okay with it.
We still have Lovett that we drafted last year, and we don't
I
know
know.
exactly. He didn't get too much of an opportunity, but he is a little bit bigger of a receiver. Dortch is even smaller than Khalif. So that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, is he going to stay healthy back there in kickoff return?
He showed he has. Now the Lions tend to like bigger guys back there. Now Khalif got concussion on a kickoff return, and that's the reason why he missed some of those games. But Khalif also had a tendency at kickoff returns to put his head down. If you notice, like I don't know if it's a protection thing, but he would put his head down, and that he would get injured quite a bit on kickoff returns. Obviously, George did it. On many more returns last year. He might just know how to protect his body a little bit more. Um, Anything else you want to talk about Dortch or move on?
No, I mean, one more thing that I guess is just that their offensive numbers were very similar last year,
Mhm.
but Dortch has the upper hand coming in, working with Petzing over the last few years. So
Yes.
Petzing knows what he has. If he has some sort of gadget plays or different things like that, Dortch had several rushing attempts last year, so probably a good chance that they might use him in something like that this year for
Mhm.
us.
Yeah, I think it's a really almost a 1-for-1 with Khalif, with the added benefit of kickoff returns. Now, Khalif is pretty dynamic at the punt return, but he's getting older, and it just is the way it worked out. I'm excited what Dortch is going to add to the roster here. All right, speaking of the roster, we currently have 64 players signed. We got 9 draft picks. We're going to go up to 90. So what Jacob and I are going to do is quickly run through the roster. We're not going to do a deep roster breakdown, but we're going to talk about where we expect some roster additions, or maybe whether we want them in free agency or draft. We're going to quickly get through that, and then we're going to get into the extension talk here. So I expect us to sign. I wrote 5 to 8 guys before the draft, but I wrote that I think before we signed like 3 guys today. So I'm expecting about 5 or 6 more guys in free agency, whether that's before the draft or after the draft, that we're going to add. We'll add the draft picks, and then there'll be undrafted free agents on top of that. Are you in alignment with that? Is that what you think, Jacob? What would you expect? Or
Yeah, I mean, and that tracks for last year too. I think last year when I looked, the last move that we made before the draft was like March 28th or something, and then we had
okay,
no movement until after the draft happened. So
yep,
probably going to be looking similar.
yep, and then it'll be there's another wave of free agency right after the draft after teams rosters get a little more strained out. So quarterbacks, obviously, we got Jared Goff, Teddy Bridgewater. We're going to add one more, either through the draft or we're going to have someone in here that could throw passes. So I don't think there's really too much to talk about there. Running back, I think we're almost set. You got Pacheco, you got Jabari Small. Now Kai Robichaud is listed on our roster. I could see maybe him getting cut and adding someone else in there. Jacob Sailors is on there, and Sunivaki, and obviously Jameer Gibbs. So there might be one guy that they add in here, but I don't expect too much change in there. You on board with that,
Same.
Jacob?
Jabari
Yeah.
Small, Robichaud. I mean, that those are ones where, if there's an undrafted free agent that they like that's out there, it's a running back, and they, kind of need to make some room for it. Maybe one of those guys gets pushed out.
Yep. I see that. So wide receiver, we got Meeks, Malik Cunningham, Dominic Lovett, Tom Kennedy, Tesla, Jameson Williams, and Amon Ra. And then obviously we added Dortch today. I still think we might add one in there, and maybe some, a kick return. But I think it's going to be an undrafted free agent. That's the way I feel right now. I don't know if we're gonna, unless there's someone in the draft they really like. I don't really see them adding too much in the draft.
I don't see them drafting receiver either. I think one, you might even have two, but I think they're both going to be undrafted guys.
Yep. That's the way I feel like you're definitely set at the top end. You're hoping Meeks or Lovett has developed a little bit, and then obviously add Dortch. I think we're set there. Tight end, we've had Conklin. Brock Wright's obviously there. We got Sam Laporta, and they got Tom Gordon and Zach Horton. I think we're going to have an undrafted guy in here. Honestly, the dark horse is Brock Wright could be cut, and then we add someone else. Like I could see us doing that and then drafting someone if there's a tight end we'd like a little bit later on. Um, I, Brock Wright could be gone after this year, especially with adding of Conklin. I don't know. It's the way I feel.
I agree. Cost effective move as well.
Yep. So as far as offensive line, I don't want to get too far into this, but I think we're going to add 3 or 4 more offensive lines. Definitely at the top end of the draft, we're adding a tackle, right? I mean, I think we're all in agreement that we're going to first or second round pick is going to be a tackle, but we also need some guard help too. Maybe some development in there, and then maybe even a late center. I don't know I think Kate Mays is obvious our center, but he's only going to be here for a couple years. Could be a late round guy you want to draft, but a lot of times centers go undrafted too. So I would expect if it's a center, it's probably going to be undrafted, but it could be a late round guy.
Yeah, I mean, the guards that we have, Miles Frazier, Mahogany, Juice, and Tate Ratledge, I mean, if we went into the season with those guys at guard and then maybe, you have undrafted people too, I think I would be okay with that, having a competition for those spots amongst those 4. Absolutely have to have a tackle, at least one.
Yeah, I agree. And I wouldn't mind just one more guard. And I sure that we're going to draft someone. We need, I think Miles is, hopefully he's made some development. Some people are iffy on Christian Mahogany. We'll see, how he develops. Tate is going to be good, and we don't know what we have with Juice Scruggs yet. Second round pick,
right?
He's a former second round pick. Let's get him in here. Maybe if he gets stability and he's doing guard, he'll be all right. But it was rough in the Texans, but their whole line was rough. So when they have bad grades and everybody's bad, that to me that's tough. When you don't trust the guy next to you, it's hard to have good offensive line play. It really is.
100%. Yes.
Yep. All right. So edge, obviously we got Hassanin, Hutchinson, Wanham. We kind of already talked about that. We're gonna have to add. I mean, we're gonna add like four more guys, but not that we're gonna carry it into the season, but up to the 90 man, you're gonna add like 4 or 5 more edges. Now they could be defensive line / edge, or even linebackers that could play edge too. Like there's a lot of leeway there. I think it's going to be at least 1 or 2 more free agents that we get, and then I'm hoping that there's someone that we could draft higher up in the draft too.
Right. Yes, please. Just a funny, interesting note is that Aleem's cap hit is more than the rest of the defensive line combined this year.
Well, more than it's by like multiples of it. Or are you including edge?
Well, Hutch,
Or
yes,
yeah,
Hutch is
yeah,
10.
okay.
Hutch is 10 million. But then other than that, DJ Wanham is 6. Tyleek's 3.7. Everybody else is
Yeah.
hovering around 1.
I know.
So altogether, they're still not quite to Aleem's cap hit. That's
yeah,
just
exactly.
funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny, but it also kind of shows that we don't have enough edge, or we don't have enough defensive linemen on this team right now.
Mm-hmm. I will say that a name that we haven't talked about much, and I'm kind of curious how his camp's going to look, is Mekhi Wingo. He was injured for a lot of camp of last year, and then kind of came in the season, was inactive, like was active for a game, played quite a few snaps for like one game, and then was basically a healthy scratch for the rest of the season. I've heard conflicting stuff from some of the beat writers about him doing really good in practice, like what they're hearing. They can't see practice, so they don't really know. But then also other people say, that's just talk. So I don't know if that's true, but I'm really wondering where they're going to put Wingo on this line. Smaller guy, obviously he's not going to be in there for the run, but can he provide some pass rush on pass rush downs? That's where I'm at on that. Any other guys you want to talk about on here, Jacob?
No,
for
I
line?
think that it's probably Wingo's only 23 years old, but it feels like obviously like this is his last chance. He might not make the team. What are we doing with him? And if it's because he's smaller, I mean, we are the ones that drafted him, right? Like you drafted him for this spot. You knew what size he was. What were we expecting?
Yep.
The whole Wingo stuff is so weird.
I agree. And that's why I think it's a wild card. Like they had to have a plan for him. Did they think he was going to get bigger after they got, like he's going to be able to put on muscle and be able to, even the smaller size, be able to add to his frame? I'm
300
not sure.
pounds, but he's only 6 foot tall. But what do you want him to do?
Exactly. You're in that tweener stage, right? All right. Cornerback room. I think you and I are both in agreement. We're going to need to add between quarterback and safety. We're going to have to add some more bodies in here for sure, especially with the injury history of some of these guys. Rakestraw, Terrion, DJ Reed even got injured last year.
Dorsey.
So I expect, Dorsey. Yes, exactly. So I got McCreary, Whiteside, Dorsey, Rakestraw, Rock, Terrion Arnold, DJ Reed. I'm comfortable going in the season, like outside of the legal stuff with Terrion. I'm comfortable with Terrion and DJ being our starters. I really am. Like I know that people are down on Terrion, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Rock being number 3. I'm comfortable with that. If Rakestraw can provide something, that would be really, really helpful, especially with McCreary coming in for nickel. If Rakestraw and McCreary go at it for nickel, we'll see. But I'm not as down on this room as I know a lot of people are. But also I'm not a
Terrion. But I mean, he also still has not been charged or anything, right? So it's like if something was going to come of this, it would have already happened. But he's got the injury history, which is the other, the injury from last year, which is concerning. Ennis, though, man, when we saw Ennis, like I've seen with my own eyes, he did decently well at training camp. Like he showed flashes. He was able to intercept the ball. Like he was doing okay. And it's just so tough that he's not been able to get out there. But unfortunately, some players are just injury prone, and they've been various injuries. It's not always the same stuff that he's aggravating either. So it's just terrible. But he's 24 years old, and I really feel like if he can stay healthy, if he can get on the field, he could make an impact.
I agree.
It seems to be a big ask of him to stay healthy and stay out there.
Yeah, and some of those guys are, like you said, just like that, injury prone. But also, I will tell you, remember he missed that time with the shoulder, and then he actually came back for the practice that you and I were at, and you could tell that he was laboring, right? Which tells me one thing. Number one, he's willing to, fight through the injury. Number two, tells me that he wants to play this game. And number 3, he knew he wasn't guaranteed, like he was going to make the roster, but he wanted to get some playing time. Like he's not going to put his body through that if anything he thought was given to him because of him being a second round pick. He was really trying to make an impact. Unfortunately, I think he tried to play through the injury and it just got worse. And then he had to miss the season.
Right. Yeah. He also has that same chip on his shoulder where he, a lot of mocks had him going round 1 and then he falls and goes in round 2. He's wanting to prove these people wrong and he just can't get out there.
can't get out of his own way. As far as safety goes, you got Lauren Strickland, Thomas Harper, Izian, Kirby Joseph, and Brian Branch. I'd be really happy with this if we didn't have the injury worry about Kirby and Brian, really, because I'm comfortable with Thomas Harper being back there. I'm curious what Izian can provide. I do like that signing; gives us a little depth in there. I would feel, who I didn't put on there is Dan Jackson. Dan Jackson's in there too, so I must have missed him. We don't. Dan Jackson's small guy. I don't really have too
Did
much.
he get waived with an injury settlement, or did he actually go on true IR?
He went on IR. I'm almost
Okay.
positive that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's why he's not listed on here. But everyone's listing Dan Jackson, so I think that he went on. Like we didn't waive him. So
Okay.
Kirby's kind of said some positive things lately about the injury. We won't know until the season goes, and obviously with Brian, we won't
Exactly.
know. So if we go into the season and they both can't play, then this room is. I'm not happy with this. We're gonna have to
Right.
add another couple bodies in there. I am happy with Thomas Harper though, especially if he's safety 3. I'm really okay with that, to be honest with you. So that's kind of where we're at. I think we're gonna add 3 more defensive backs, either safety, cornerback, somewhere in there's combination. That's where I think we're gonna, add on that. All right, Jacob. Let's move to extension talk. I think that I'm curious of where you're at with some of this and where the numbers that you came up with. I think before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about our current cap situation this year and what it's looking like next year. That may frame some of our talk and frame people's expectations to what to expect the Lions to do. As of right now, we have 27.2 million in cap space. However, that doesn't include the DJ Wanham deal because we don't know how that breaks down yet. Teddy Bridgewater, Damone Clark, or the Dortch deal. Those are not listed, but everybody else that we've signed so far, that we're at 27.2 million. We also have 9 draft picks and Spot Track, based on where those draft picks are. Now we could trade and move around, so this may alter it, but they estimate around 12.6 million of our draft space or our cap space we're gonna have to use to sign our draft picks. So, and then we're gonna have undrafted people on top of that, which isn't gonna take a ton, but you will use some cap space for that. But so you figure we got about around, after all that, I would say we have about 12 million in cap space, and you need to keep some during the season for injury replacements and stuff like that, which is right around 12 million. So right now we have just enough to sign, our draft picks and, what we're going to need during the season. So it means we're going to have to do some more restructuring to get there, which is not uncommon. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing. And we have guys that we can restructure, Panay and Amon-Ra, even Jared Goff further if we need to. Where this leads us to next year, 2027. As of right now, we have $70.2 million in cap space. However, we only have 26 players signed last year, but that does include Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs' 5th-year option. But we have space next year, but we have, less than half a team signed for after this year.
A lot of holes to fill.
A lot of holes to fill. So I think where I want to start on this, Jacob, is the 2 guys that are in the last year of their deal that don't have a 5th-year option are Brian Branch and Sam Laporta. Where I'd like to start with is Brian Branch. His last year of this deal is obviously this year. He's got the injury we're dealing with, so that kind of puts, a question mark in this. But his cap hit this year is 6.5 million. Do you think the Lions? My first question is, do you think he gets an extension for the Lions? I think that's an answer for Yo. That's an obvious that I think, right? I mean, I'm saying
Right.
yes, he's gonna get an extension. Do you think
Absolutely.
it happens
100%.
this year? When do you think it happens?
In my opinion, I think that this might play out similar to how the Aiden Hutchinson deal did, where we wait until he gets back out on the field. Right now, the things that I look for when I'm looking at that is, like, is their price tag going to go up considerably higher, later? Like, would it benefit us to get it done right now, or is it going to cost us that much more if we wait? And also, are there other players, going to be signing contracts soon that are going to be like outbidding or like, raising the bar, like Hutch and Parsons kind of thing? With Branch, the other people that are going to be free agents are Derwin James and Jesse Bates are the top 2 names. I think Branch is on Derwin James' level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's right where he's at. And Derwin James is one of the higher paid safeties. the concern there is the injury that just happened. And then when you factor in also that we just gave Kirby an extension, we can't have two $20 million a year safeties that can't get on the field. So in my opinion, I think that Branch, we kind of wait and see. Maybe it's during training camp, but I kind of feel like it might be in the middle of the season. I don't want it to be when the season is over, because then I feel like might be some sort of situation where Branch wants to explore his options and see how high he can drive this price tag, because he's earned it. If he comes back and plays at the level they did last year, he absolutely has earned a big contract. Where are you at with this?
Real quick, Dan Pass says that feels low. He's talking about my cap number. I got that number on Spot Track, Dan, and I looked at it this morning, and I also checked it on Over the Cap, and it's right there. We did roll. He said we rolled over $20 million, but we were like over the cap, so we needed to make those hits. And then you got to remember, Taylor Decker is a $9.4 million dead cap hit in that. So that's where we're at right now. So back to your Brian Branch stuff. Okay, I think there's two factors here that you're going to look back: is the injury to Brian Branch and the injury to Kirby Joseph. We could decide that we're going to cut bait with Kirby Joseph after next year, and I think in that case, then your apps if Brian Branch comes back healthy, or looking like he's going to develop, like this is not going to be a long-term injury. He still has an explosion. Now he may not be 100% for the whole year, but I think you get the idea. Like, you see him at practice. We're not worried about this being a long-term injury, and he's going to be able to be the Brian Branch of old. I think if that factor clears up and then Kirby looks like he's on the decline, then I foresee a Brian Branch extension before the end of the year. Kirby comes back healthy and looks like the Kirby of old. I still think they want to sign Brian Branch, but they may have, this may linger a little bit longer, maybe even two after the season. But before if they really want, if the Lions have shown, if they really want their player, they don't even let them get to the free agency portion. So we'll see. But I think there's just two factors right now we don't know. Like, we have to look at those two injuries, and I think they both go hand in hand. And I think if Kirby comes back healthy, like you said, it's going to be really hard to justify $20 million for two safeties back there. $20 million each for two safeties.
Right. But when they're both playing at a high level, if Kirby is playing at a high level still, I mean, they're two of the best safeties in the league. They're both, definitely worth it. It's just, where do you, how do you find the room in the cap? Where do you make that money so that you can afford to pay both of them? Or do you have to just choose one or the other? Do you have to let Branch walk because we've already got Kirby?
Yeah.
Right now, if you had your choice, let's say Kirby and Branch both fully healthy, injuries didn't happen. Would you rather have Kirby or Branch?
Branch.
I think I agree.
I say, even now, looking at, like, obviously the injuries could go either way, but Kirby's injury outlook is different than Brian Branch's injury outlook. Kirby's looks like this is something that is not going to ever go away. And
I said not if they're both healthy, not including the
injuries.
Oh,
I know. No. I'm just saying, when we look at it, though, like, and we still have to decide between the two players. I'm looking at, like, not hypothetical like you're looking at. I'm looking like real life. Like, I got to decide between the two players, and they're both, like, say next year, they both play to their full potential. Both of them. Brian Branch comes back. He's at what I believe is an all-pro potential. Kirby Joseph, obviously all-pro potential. They both come back next year. I say, and I had to choose between them, I cut Kirby loose, and I'd sign Brian Branch. That's what I would do, because I think Brian Branch potentially is not going to have a career-ending knee injury, whereas I think Kirby, that knee injury is not going to get better. It's a chronic issue. As far as, like, what I'm hearing, it could be up in the air, but I just believe that that's a more worrisome injury than Brian Branch's. We'll see. The other option. So let me real quick. What do you think he's going to garner, like, for a contract? Like, if you had a guess, I don't know. Did you do any numbers or?
Yeah,
anything
I mean,
like
so here's the deal. If he's playing at the level that he did before, I think that his floor has to be 20, but I think that the realistic number is probably closer to 24 or 25.
Okay.
And I think that is going to be, it might be out of our price range. I'm not sure. What number do you have?
So I'm considering the injury, but I think like Antoine Winfield Jr. is where I put him, like where I put Brian Branch at, and it's gonna eclipse that. But I had like 4 years, 80 million, $48 million guaranteed is what I had for Branch. But I think that's low end, and I went low just because of the Achilles injury, and we're not gonna know. And I think the league depends on how it plays out this year. If he comes back in October and balls out like the back half of the year, then he's going to get paid. If he comes back in November and we get limited, like less than a half a season look at him and he doesn't look as explosive, then it might be like a shorter deal, like a 2 year deal that has potential with incentives for him making there and then him still getting a payday in his prime. The other
You can
option
still
is
do the 2-year deal for average annual value of 20 though, right? I mean, you could do that. You also could tie in with the injury and stuff. What if it's the opposite? And I know we talked about like they're both healthy, both do good. Let's say Kirby this year is the same as last year, where the knee's constantly bothering him. He's up and down. He's kind of not practicing. Maybe he plays in a few games, doesn't play. Branch comes back in November. It's a little bit slow, not quite the same. Doesn't play in all the games. What if they're both having these concerns? Then what do you do with Branch?
Oh man.
Because he's still, like, hey, what I put on paper, I'm worth $20 million. Do you throw $20 million at him? That's a lot harder to do.
If he comes back in that situation that you're saying, I think the league's going to be weary about giving a guy $20 million. I also don't. I personally think that we're higher on Branch than the rest of the league. I think Brian Branch is known as a hothead around the league just because of the suspension and some of the other stuff. Um, I'm sure that there are scouts that know what type of player he is. But also, I think that there are other question marks about, him doing, getting headhunting and stuff like that, like stuff that he's done in the past. So that might limit him, and especially with the injury. So, uh, I still think we'd be the front runner to know how special Brian Branch is. We've seen him in practice every day. We know what kind of person he is. Everybody else has to assume what kind of person he is because he's not in the locker room with them. The other option that I think we're going to talk about for each one of these guys is the franchise tag option. Now we have not as a franchise used that like in a while. We haven't really had the need to use that, or it just hasn't worked out. But it's a possibility for all these guys. Just so we put it out there, the franchise tag option for this year for safeties was 20.8 million. So, it's going to be higher next year. So you're looking at 21, 22 if we want to franchise Branch for the following season. So not next year, but the year after. That would be so you could, if you think he's on the come on the injury, you're not going to use a franchise on anything, anybody else. You could franchise Brian Branch, and then that way it gives you another year to look at it, and then you sign him to his contract, and you're still in the $20 million a year ballpark, right? So that's an option.
That might be a really good option for us.
Yep.
Last player the Lions franchise tagged was Ziggy Ansah in 2018.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute, right? And yep. All right, Sam Laporta. Let's move on to the next. Our second round draft pick isn't eligible for a 5th-year option. This is the last year of his deal. Obviously, he's coming off an injury too, a back injury, which could be worrisome for the tight end that you're asking to block a lot. Like he wants to be one of these tight ends that does it all. I think that it is noticeable that after Laporta went down, our run game took a hit too. And so I think that that's very noticeable. Now, Brock Wright went out at the same time, so you were down to your 3rd string tight end. So that played into it. But I think that Sam provides very good blocking. Obviously, he is a really good 3rd down threat. Our offense took a hit when he left too. So his last year on his deal is 6.7 million. That's it. Which is more likely to you, them doing Branch or Laporta?
I think Laporta is more likely.
Mm.
I think that they want to with Branch, but I think there's bigger question marks with Branch than Laporta.
Okay.
I think Laporta's top 5 tight end in the league. So right now, the other tight ends, like I said with the last one, I kind of look and see, who else is going to be up for a contract. TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, Michael Mayer, Tucker Kraft. Those are the guys that are going to be signing contracts next year as well. Laporta has already outperformed all of those guys.
Yep.
Now, if you don't include last year because of the injuries to Laporta and then Kraft was injured too, but like the years before that, Laporta has more receptions, more yards, more touchdowns than anybody else on that list. Obviously, you've got the injury concern, so maybe they have to play with like guaranteed money or contract language or whatever. But when you look at where the league's at right now with the tight end contracts, Hawkinson is making 16.5. That's the floor for Laporta is 16.5.
Oh yeah.
Trey McBride and George Kittle are at 19. That's the question mark is, do you hit 19? Do you go above 19? You've got the injury and everything going on. I think a fair number for Laporta would probably be like 17 and a half.
Okay.
What do you got, though?
I think he's got to come in closer to Trey McBride numbers, especially with the cap going up. You're going to have that naturally going up. The injury is really going to be the wild card here, and just like we have Brent. So we're just, obviously we could be wrong, and he misses some of the year, or he doesn't look like the same player. Then all this goes out the window. I think the Petsing option, what he did with Trey McBride, you're hoping that he can, Laporta has this. Obviously the weapons are a lot different between the two franchises. So there's only one ball, and we got to get all our guys. I don't think they sign him before the year before. I think it's a Brian Bryant situation. We're looking to see how it goes. I could see them wanting to extend him during the year. I think the franchise option is a lot more likely for Laporta, just because of where the number lands. And then we could, there's also the injury in there. So the franchise, like Kyle Pitts signed this year. I got conflicting numbers. So like Spot Track had 15 million for Kyle Pitts contract, but Sports Illustrated said that it was 16.3 million. So I'm not sure, but we're in that range. You're under 19 million. So you're going to get it cheaper than you think that you're going to get him on a yearly rate, because I'm thinking we're closer to 19. We're probably in the 18, 19 million a year ballpark, I think, for Laporta. So I think franchising might, I think we're going to use the franchise tag next year. I just don't know on who we're going to use it on. And
seems like it would make sense to use the franchise tag, but I mean, the hope is that both of these guys are healthy and they come back looking like they did before, and that this is a real, we're trying to make sure we keep both of them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want another year of, will they play, won't they play? Every time you see them on the injury report, it's like, man, please let them come back, let them practice today. Yeah,
I still think that he ends up like Isaiah Likely got he got 13.3 million, which is an interest like that raises the bar on there. Kyle Pitts, I know he had an all-pro season last year, but he was extremely frustrating the previous couple years, whether that was from offensive football or whatever. I could understand why you're going to franchise. You got to make sure Kyle Pitts can do it 2 years in a row. Sam Laporta, I know that he didn't match his rookie stats, but as a player, and we saw what he added on third down last year, he just has an innate ability to find the open space, which is, what Petsing's going to do is going to find him open space, and he's really good after the catch, which I think is very underrated in Sam Laporta's game, is that he's really good after the catch, finding space. And I think that adds that's not George Kittle level as far as like what he does after the ball. Kittle's also a very injury prone guy just because of the way he plays the game too.
Right.
So I could see a franchise happen with Sam Laporta. I know that you said that you think that Branch over Laporta, or Laporta over Branch. I don't know. I think it's over. I don't know. I love Sam, but I also think you could draft a tight end too, and be able to use it, especially right now. There's replacements out there. However, we have nothing on our roster right now that could even come close to matching Laporta's production. So that's something too. All right, let's move on to Jahmyr Gibbs. So he obviously first round pick, has a 5th year option. This year, he has $5.7 million cap hit. His fifth year option is 14.2. Is that what you had? Yeah, 14.2. Well, 14.3 if you round up. 14.3 million would be his fifth year option, which the Lions are obviously going to pick that up. That's I think after the draft I think they could announce it any time, but I think they have until like the first week of May or something to announce that. Uh, That's going to happen. They're going to get him for the fifth year option. So, do you think? Uh, Now we're talking the next two guys, Gibbs and Campbell, are healthy. We don't have to worry about injuries with them, at least not that we're aware of, any offseason surgeries or anything like that. So I think these guys could get extensions before the draft or in this offseason. Do you think that Gibbs gets? When do you think he signs his extension? If you think he's going to sign
Yeah.
an extension,
These guys are both healthy. They're also both like top 5 players of their position and are going to be, costing a lot of money. That is very hard for me on Gibbs. I want Gibbs. He's a dynamic player, and now he's even more important that Montgomery is gone, right? So I want Gibbs. I want him to be here. Do I want to throw, $20+ million at him right now before the season starts and incorporate his, his fifth year and everything? I don't know. I honestly don't know if I want to commit that much to him. It's a really tough situation. I kind of feel like just let him play out the fifth year and then see, roll with it next time. You've also got Bijan Robinson. That contract's coming, and you know that Bijan's going to be getting probably similar. He might reset the market with the Saquon thing too. It might be one of those things. The second guy that signs gets more than the first guy that signs. So you got the benefit of getting ahead of it there, but this is just a toss up for me. Obviously, I want him on the team, but it's a lot of money for a running back. He's going to be utilized even more than he was last year because we have to. Yeah, I don't know. This is a real toss up for me. Where are you at with this?
Yeah. So you've kind of I'm gonna elaborate on a couple of your points there. Running back position, just in general, I have really tough time committing money to that position. Now you could structure the contract almost similar to Kirby Joseph, where they're getting an option bonus each year, so you have a chance to get out of it if an injury happens. And I think you almost have to structure a running back, especially someone like Gibbs, like that, because if God forbid he gets a knee injury and he loses even a couple steps, he becomes a lot less dangerous. If you take his home run threat away or decrease that, that's dangerous. I don't like I mentioned before. I don't think he has like when I think of elite vision, I don't think that like that he has that, and I also think that I think maybe he could develop some patience, but there was a stat in the Baltimore game that they said that he hits the line like either the fast or second fastest like miles per hour in the league. And when you watch Tim and David Montgomery, the reason why David Montgomery would sometimes get more yards than him is that David Montgomery would just pause at the line sometimes, let a crease develop, and then get the yards. Whereas Gibbs seems to like just sometimes run right into a tackle and just because he's trying to utilize that speed. The thing is that I also worry about is you also said it is last year we increased his usage a lot. And the things that we didn't do in his first couple years in the league is that he was splitting time with David Montgomery, so reducing wear and tear. And it was obviously like 75-25 last year using Gibbs. And with getting Pacheco, I think it's going to be that or even more. And we're asking to be out there and like passing downs and everything like that. You start increasing that wear and tear, injuries will happen. It's just going to happen. The more times you touch the ball, the increased risk. So that's why I don't want to sign him to a long-term deal. And I think that there are options out there to do this. I've kind of went through this, and I see what you think about this. But if he were to sign a deal, I think he'd right now command 4 years, 84 million, and I think he gets 60 million guaranteed. I think he beats the Saquon deal. I really do. I think that people around the league know that he's there, and I think Bijan signs for a very similar contract. Now, you say, right? Should we sign him before? The advantage is sign him early before Bijan. Bijan gets paid more, and the contract looks better. but I don't know if I want to do that with a running back.
The thing about most of the running back deals anymore are that a lot of them are only 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, if you sign a 4-year deal like that, that's also something you can have incentive laden or have different outs or different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that was the exact contract, nobody would be able to look at it and be like, that's not fair. He's not worth that money. That's not the question at all. It's just when you're trying to build the rest of the team too, you've got so much. I mean, knock on wood, like, what if something happens to him this year, next year, if he starts missing games, like you said, if he loses a step, that's huge. And I know like the Saquon thing is the biggest example, but I mean, Philadelphia has an out, I think, every year. Like they could get rid of Saquon every year if they wanted to, but it's like I think all but like 6 million of Saquon's contract was guaranteed. So they only did 2 years, but now they can just incorporate that as dead cap and spread it out over whatever the next 2 years with a void year, whatever it is. So do we do that though? If you're Gibbs, are you okay with signing a 2-year contract? Chances are you're wanting that, you're wanting the 4-year, you're wanting the first big one.
Mm-hmm.
You've earned it.
Yep. Well, the advantage of doing that is that we can incorporate the 5th year, just like we've done with Panay and done with Aiden. And, you spread that cap hit out and there's some, cap manipulation in there. The thing is that like, I just have the guaranteed money is where the sticking point would be for me. Do you give him like, 45 million guaranteed and then do roster bonus, roster options later on, kind of like what you did with Kirby so that you have a get out? I just have trouble with that. Now, let's talk about the franchise tag. So the projected value of this year for running back is 14.5 million, which is considerably less than the 20 million that we're projecting for him, right? Um, it's going to go up as these running backs sign, but let's just say for next year that it's 16 million. Let's just say 16 million. You could franchise, you would get your 5th year option and then you could franchise him, right? And in 28. So that means we'd have him for 3 more seasons. That would carry him up through the 20 so he'd be 26 at that time. You could franchise a guy twice. And the stipulation is that it's got to be so the first time you franchise someone, it's like the average of the top 5 guys if you use the highest franchise tag. It's the top 5 guys at your position or 120% of your previous salary. So he'd have to get so if he got the 5th year option be 14.2. The franchise for 2028 would be 120% of that, be 17 million. And then you could franchise him twice. The second franchise would be 20.4 million, and that'd be in his year 27 when he'd be 27. So that you could have him for essentially 3 years, the 5th year option, the year after, and then include next year, that'd be 4 years from now. So you'd have him up to his age 27 and going into his 28-year-old season. And you'd pay 3 years, 51.6 million. So you're paying like a lot less than 20 million average for those 3 years. And then you get him all the way up to when he turns 28, which, obviously with a running back going up to that 30 years is where you start seeing the decline. So
that would be a very smart move and very doable, like on the surface for the Lions. But what does that say about your organization, about taking care of your players and players wanting to come here if you just use those franchise tag multiple times?
100%. And that's where you're at. Like there's cons besides the money because I think it's no brainer to go it this way. But player satisfaction is number one because Lions of this regime, especially, has paid players that are they're cornerstone players, and they've shown that you do what you want, they're going to do that. So I don't think they would go this way, but this seems like the business way, the way to go. But this team's going to have to do creative things to make it under the cap and field the team if we're going to sign all these players. The other problem with doing it this franchise way is that you can't manipulate the cap at all. Like that money just goes straight against the cap. Whereas if we sign him to like one of these contracts, you could add void years to spread this cap hit out. And your cap hit, even though he's at average value is getting 21 million in his contract, really his cap hit maybe 9 million for the first year. And then we're backload the contract. You can't do that with this franchise route. So you pay less money overall but you can't manipulate the cap bar because you can't do franchise them and then add a void year. You can't do that. So there are drawbacks in that as far as like the way you do a cap. But
I just think that that's terrible. Like on this, like I said, on the surface, like number wise and everything, that's all great. That's terrible for morale. And I feel like that's when you have the situation where, the holdout is going to happen, or where, he's like, I'm not going to play on a franchise tag. I'm not going to do that. And then that just killer for the locker room and for everyone that's involved.
yeah. Dan says, do you think we're a franchise kind of tag kind of team? And I'd say the answer is no, but that doesn't mean that
Not
we
until
won't
we have to
utilize
be.
it. Yeah. And I think that this is a very unique situation. Like these 4 guys coming, and you got 2 of the injuries. So there's some question marks there. If you feel they're all 4 cornerstone guys, you may have to do some things that you're not 100% count. And just because you franchise tag, it also just like that is also a negotiation play. Like, oh, you're not going to sign this. We're just going to franchise tag you, and then let it play out. Like you have that. Like that helps the Lions as far as negotiating to have that in their back pocket. Like we could just franchise.
Yeah, but that's
tag you.
also like the dirty business side of it.
Yeah, I agree, and but I just think that sometimes you have to do those things. So I think franchise tagging is definitely on the table. I don't think the scenario that I played out with the do a double franchise tag is going to happen. We did that with Sue, right? And then basically priced us out that we couldn't. That obviously he didn't want anything to do with us after that. And I don't expect that to happen, but I'm saying with a running back, that may be the smart way to go. I really hesitate giving a running back a long-term deal. It can go sideways real fast.
Yeah. That's why, I was very conflicted on that one.
Yep.
The next one, not so much conflict for me though.
Yeah.
Jack Campbell.
Yep.
The other first round pick. Sign him now. Get it done whenever you can.
Yeah.
He's a top player. I mean, he's done everything that's asked of him. He's probably worth like so here, we both agree, definite re-sign,
100%.
probably like a decent long-term contract. What do you think the average annual right now? Fred Warner is the highest average at $21 million a year.
Yeah.
How much do you think Jack gets?
Yeah. So let's just run down his number so we're all on the same page. $4.7 million cap hit this year. This plays into it, Jacob. Because of how linebackers are kind of lumped together with some of these edge players, like your Brian Burns and stuff like that, the cap hit next year for a 5th-year option is $21.9 million. So that automatically puts him above, Fred Warner on that. So I think that reason why it pushes it like that, this deal is going to happen the first out of all these 4. This one's going to happen the first. First way it happens. I think Jack wants to be here. We've given Jack the defense. I think it's mutual. He's an all-pro player. He's on the ascend. He's just the type of he's a Lions linebacker. I just love it. So you asked me what I think he's gonna get, right?
Yeah.
So I have projected 4 years, 86 million, 58 million guaranteed is what I wrote down.
So you think that's just above 21 million a year then, right?
I think he's going
to make him the highest player. Like just
I think
barely.
he's gonna eclipse Fred Warner money. Now it could be more depending on how much they project the cap to go up next year. But I think that this I would be shocked if this doesn't happen before the season. That them wrapping this up. I could see this happen before the draft. I think this is cut and dry unless there's an injury that we don't know, like an off-season surgery that he had that they're waiting on. That could be the only thing. But obviously, he was healthy through all last year, so I don't think that's going to happen. But that's where I think he's at. Where do you think he's at? Am I in the ballpark where you're at, or?
Yeah, no, I think the floor is 21. I think 21.5 would be a pretty good deal for the Lions. A steal. The player, okay. Jack Campbell, gets what he deserves. Like, he gets the highest paid, or he gets up there. I'm hoping it's not considerably more than that, depending on what his agent's asking for. If he's asking for 24, 25 million a year, The 5th-year option for Jack Campbell, if he would have had more than one Pro Bowl as a linebacker, is $26.8 million a year.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that you've had that thing where players have to fight if they're defined as a linebacker or an edge because they get so much more money if they're a linebacker, I believe is the case. But yeah, he deserved it. He's healthy. A huge part of the defense, especially now that Anzalone is gone. I think we need to pay him. We just need to make it happen sooner rather than later.
I agree. Franchise tagging is not an option for Jack because the franchise tag is $28.1 million, which is way more than what we're gonna happen. I think it makes sense to do it now. You get out of the 5th-year option because the 5th-year option I think you're paying him more than what I'm projecting that he would make. You're locked into that hitting the cap that year too. Like you can't, spread that out, can't do a void year. So I really think it's a no-brainer to sign Jack Campbell. I think he's the first one out of these 4 to get the deal for a multitude of reasons, but I think it's going to happen. And I wouldn't be shocked if it happened before the draft. I would not be shocked if that happened.
Panay and Amon-Ra, their extensions happened right around draft time or right before draft time.
Yep.
But then you've got, when we signed Hutch's extension, obviously it was way late in the season. J-Mo's extension was like right before kickoff, was it not? Like I feel like Jameson's extension was like right. It was like, okay, yeah, we've seen him in training camp. We know what's about to happen. We're going to sign him right now. But then, Kirby's extension last year, which was a little bit different, but that was right around draft time as well. So I anticipate this happening probably within the next 30 days here.
I agree. Hopefully. And the way that we look at this, right, and we're like, all right, he's going to get the highest paid linebacker money, like in this class of linebacker, off-ball linebacker, middle linebacker, that Fred Warner type. If you look at the Amon-Ra deal, if you look at the Panay deal, Aiden's probably going to look like this at one day. It looks like a steal. Like J-Mo's deal looks really, really good when you still like Alec Pierce is getting, the money that he got. Yes. Like, and any of these guys, like if we do Gibbs, maybe that even looks like that. You get the Bijan after that. Maybe if the Raiders turn around, Ashton Jeanty is another guy that's in line. Those type of players. Maybe they look different. Now Gibbs, I think is unique because of how much he does in the passing game. There's not a lot of comparables with how much we used him in the passing game, right? Christian McCaffrey, obviously, Alvin Kamara, but he's on the downside of his career. Saquon is using the passing game, but not like Jameer is. I mean, Jameer is, if he improves his route tree, he's like almost another wide receiver out there, slot wide receiver. So I think that puts him in a unique category too. And when you look how many pass catches he caught last year, that's another factor. That's a lot of our offense. And maybe that's why the Lions would be willing to give him the 4-year, $84 million. I don't know. I just hesitate to do that with the running back, especially when we're asking him to take so many hits. I don't know. We'll see.
He's worth it. That's the thing. He's worth it. But That's like, where is this smart move? That's where it's a toss up. It's not a question of like, does he command that much money? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. It's the risk of the position. It just is with me, and just the type of running back that he is. We've seen so many running backs that Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb was all-world running back, and then he blows out his knee. Now he's barely holding on to second string with the Texans. It just really happens really fast with these guys. But you look at Saquon. Saquon was very injured early on, and then he had that breakout year with Philadelphia. But that wear and tear took hold, and last year he wasn't as good, whether that was offensive line or not. Saquon just didn't have, after he took all that wear and tear the previous year, he wasn't the same last year.
I mean, that's just how it works for the running backs.
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott and the Cowboys, I mean, just burst onto the scene the same kind of way. And he had that whole like holdout. I don't remember if that was a franchise tag, but he had a holdout where, he wasn't practicing with the team and everything. They give him a big contract. He never played up to it. You cannot get 300 touches a year for, 5 years in a row and not come away banged up repetitively every week like that.
I know. Now you could say with Gibbs is like one of those guys that can avoid hard contact where he's not, Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott are guys that just run right into the pile, but just getting hit and banged up on every play. I mean, it's a lot. All right. Before we take off here, Jacob, something that we were going to talk about at the top of the show, but I want to talk about it right now. It's real quick. It's about these two different roster rules that we're talking about. The first one is very quick. The Steelers proposed about the video call with up to 5 unrestricted free agents during the 2-day negotiation period. Currently, right now, they tried to do it where they could talk. It was between the teams and the agents. I at this point, just why do we even have this tamper period? Just call it what it is. It's free agency. I mean, it's dumb. And then
my thoughts exactly. What is the point of doing this? I don't like what. Who is this benefiting? Why? I really I don't know the reason. I don't know what good reason they have for having all these contracts are announced and all this stuff. Can't become official until Wednesday, but you've got all these things dropping on Monday and Tuesday. And then especially I think this year they had the temporary where they tried to do this video call between the teams.
Okay.
But in the past it really was just the teams and the agents. Can you imagine the team's talking to the agent. The agent's like, okay, yeah, we'll call you back. And then you got to wait for them to talk to their player and then get back in touch with you. You got to figure out contract details. You got to figure out what players want to be here. And, it's also let's say you've got 2 players. You're talking to this one. You really want this one. The other one's talking to a different team and signs elsewhere because you have to play by these rules and you only have these 5 calls or, the whole thing is just crazy to me.
I just think it's stupid, and I don't even like this tamper period.
Who does it benefit?
It's dumb. And then also you look at what the Max Crosby potential fallout of that. This trade falls through. They already agreed to these contracts. There's just so much stupid stuff. And then I don't think there was anybody that backed out of the free agent deal, but I think last year or the year before, there was a Cowboys player that backed out, went back to his team. It's funky. I think it's stupid. The other one that I would do on it that I think is also funky and stupid is the Browns proposal that you're allowed to trade up to traded draft picks up to 5 seasons in the future. Currently, you're only allowed to trade the next 3 years. The Browns want to do 5 years. I'm gonna let you before I have my piece. What do you think about this trade proposal?
Real quick, just that last player that you're talking about was Randy Gregory for the Cowboys.
Okay.
Because he signed a extension with the Cowboys, and that was announced on a Monday or whatever. And then I think it was a couple days into the free agents thing, he changed his mind and signed somewhere else. But yeah, this is hilarious that it's the Browns, that proposed this, right? What are you guys trying to do? How many more draft picks are you trying to play around with? Why? I actually like that it's just 3 seasons ahead so that you can't get too far ahead and you can't think about the Vikings GM, they moved on from their GM right now. What if he would have traded the first round pick 5 years out from now? And then whatever GM's got to take that job also has to immediately plan around the fact that, 4 or 5 years from now, we don't even have these draft picks to play with. I don't like it. What are your thoughts?
Derailing a franchise, that's why it's funny that the Browns project this.
Do you think they felt like they didn't give enough for Deshaun Watson? They were wanting to throw a few more first round picks.
No, they want 5 first round picks for Myles Garrett. That's what they want. That's what they got. Right. They're we're gonna try Myles Garrett. We're gonna do this rule, and we're gonna get him because that was my immediate thought, is that they would screw themselves even more in the future by they would give up 4 or 5 first round picks for Deshaun Watson instead of the 3 and all the money and all that stuff. No, it needs to be 3 and that's it, because you're going to have teams derailing their franchises. And then you talk about parity, it's going to be really hard when a franchise gives up 4 or 5 first round picks. No, 3 years, that's it. I don't want any trades happen in the NBA either, where you're this is protected from this, if it's a top 5, I don't want any of that. It's so stupid.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, they need to keep it the way it is. And I know
5 years is a long time.
It is.
That's a very long time. Our draft pick 5 years ago in the 2021 draft was Panay.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, that's how long 5 years go. So, like,
Yeah.
there's potential, like, you know what? We need to trade up for Panay, and then we lose our 5th round pick in 2026, or 1st round pick in 2026. You forget about it until that year. You're like, oh, crap, that's right.
Yeah, I just,
which in this case probably would have been okay, but you know that's not majority of the time. It's not.
No, and I just it'd be interesting what a team like the Rams would do, right? Because they're all about trading their draft picks, and they obviously been successful. I don't think for most teams it would be detrimental. The Les Snead does an amazing job at drafting late round picks. He just does, but as for every team taking that, you're right. Like, and that would make it incredibly hard for, like you said, the next GM coming in, because they're not going to look at that and be like, they're not going to take that into consideration when you take a job. When you take a job, they expect a turnaround, regardless of what the situation is. They expect a quick turnaround, and they're not going to be like, well, I'm sorry, we didn't have a draft pick the whole time you were here,
Right.
for 3 or 4 years. I'm sorry, we've traded all those away, but we still expected you to turn this franchise around. Yeah, it is a disaster. It should not happen. I'm hoping it gets laughed at. I hope that no one wants to do this because I think it's bad for NFL.
Yeah, 100% agree. Don't want any part of that.
Nope. All right, man. It's been good talking football with you. I have a good time. I want to thank Dan for being on here. All the comments on there. Hopefully, we answered your questions. It was a great show. I really like the dialogue that we had on the extensions. I think that there's just so many nuances that to have on that, and I'm curious what other people think about it. So go to our Twitter page, comment on Spotify. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are we way off base? Do you agree with us? What other options did I miss? Did Jacob miss? What did we think about? So I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about that. Got
Absolutely.
anything else, Jacob?
Nope. Shouts out to Dan.
Yeah.
Lots of
next
comments
week,
in here. I didn't see most of these.
Yeah, there's a lot. Dan was busy. So next week we will not be on Wednesday. It's either going to be Tuesday or Thursday. Jacob's going to a Pistons game next week, so we don't really know, and it might just depend on where news hits and what our work schedule is. If I were to feel it out, it's probably going to be Thursday of next week, just because Jacob usually works late on Tuesday, and give him more time to prepare.
Correct.
But we'll kind of just play it by ear. But that, as of right now, if you guys are wanting to listen to us Thursday, 9 p.m. Is probably where we're gonna hit right now. But we'll keep follow us on Twitter at Talking Grit Pod, and we will I usually throw an update in there. And for Jacob, I'm Jason. Let's go Lions.